before September 11, I had already been in the military 6 years. And what led to my joining the military back in '95 brings us back to when I was first born, actually.
Excellent.
And hopefully I'll be able to wrap that in 2 minutes.
No, do please.
So basically, both of my parents were involved in the Sandinista resistance to the dictatorship of Somoza, and that eventually led to a situation in which we had to basically leave the country. And my mother and my brother and I came to the United States back in '75 when I was in the same year I was born. And we stayed here for a little bit, maybe a little bit less than a year, and then from there we went to Costa Rica, and then we stayed there a few years until the Sandinistas defeated the dictatorship, and then we went back to Nicaragua, and then we kept coming back and forth from the U.S., to the U.S. and back to Nicaragua. We lived in Cuba for some time. Finally, we moved back to Costa Rica for a couple of years, and then from Costa Rica we came to the States, still being a teenager, still not having graduated from high school, with all this struggle and no real sense of belonging. So by the time I graduated high school and started going to college, I had lived in 3 countries in a period of 2.5, 3 years. So it was a very unstable situation for me. I was not very politically educated, even though I came from a pretty heavy political background, because after the Sandinistas defeated the dictatorship, because both of my parents have been prominent in not only in the resistance but also in the government itself, I lived in privilege, so I never had to question where things came from. I never had to question my place on earth or anything. So that's the context of my joining the military, not having a sense of belonging, not coming from an educated position, looking for the same things that people look for when they join the military in the U.S., looking for a sense of camaraderie with other people, a sense of adventure, financial stability, help at school. Those were the things that led me to join the military back in '95. And I did 3 years in the active duty military, in the active duty army. And then in '98, I went back to Florida, to Miami, where I live, and continued on going to school. And I came to the end of my 4-year degree right before the war started, and that's when I got stop loss. And moving around so much and changing reality so often had 2 main effects that I can see. And one was negative and one was positive. The negative one was that, I grew detached from things, that I sort of had this understanding that things didn't last long, that I was going to move around again. And of course, that's one of the main reasons, as I explained, that, that led me to join the military. We're looking for that, connection to something bigger than myself. But at the same time, moving around so much and so often equipped me to adapt to different situations and to be flexible and to be tolerant and to know that things eventually pass and that you are able to overcome and to start over again. So when I joined the military at age 19, I was trained, by life to not have such a hard time. So basic training was pretty brutal, and I was away from home for a long time, and it's like you start from scratch. They destroy your sense of individuality, and you become a part of the program. And for me, that wasn't that difficult because I was ready for that from my early life. And that's true for the most part of my military career up until I get out of the active duty army.
Yes, so talk with us about the transformation of becoming a conscientious objector.
Well, to be honest with you, I had a hard time believing that I could be a conscientious objector, because when I deployed to Iraq, my opposition to the war was very political. weapons of mass destruction, Al-Qaeda, uranium purchases and things like that. To me, we had not really made a case for an invasion and occupation. But when I got to Iraq, all that changed because we engaged in abusive treatment of prisoners, because we were killing civilians, because our commanders were exposing their soldiers, unnecessarily in order to advance their careers and things like that. So I had all these questionings, and I had all these questionings of war, all this, this very critical attitude about war that had nothing to do with politics, and that therefore applied to war in general. For instance, whether the war is justified legally or international law has blessed it or whatever, you still have, the human factor to deal with, ambition, greed, things like that, fear, fatigue, all these things that lead to horrible, horrible scenarios. And, but at the same time, so when I came home with this newly acquired on-the-ground experience, my idea of conscientious objection was the idea that the military had given me, that, you have to, if you can't like shoot your weapon and be a conscientious objector. You cannot go through war and then say I'm a conscientious objector. And so at the time, when they first told me, maybe you are a conscientious objector, I said, no, I can't be. I was in war, I was in combat. It's too late for me. I'm marked. I'm stained. I carry the stigma with me. But I was convinced that no, people can have a change of heart, and you should just look at the questions. Just think about it. Just try to answer the questions, and I did. And it was a very painful process, but it was also a process of self-discovery, in that I realized that I could no longer participate in good conscience, in good faith, in war anymore. I opposed it with every cell in my body, and I learned that I learned one thing that I say to everybody about conscientious objection, is that there's no stronger argument against war than the experience of war itself. And to me, having been to war is the strongest platform upon which I can stand to be a conscientious objector, and that's something that I didn't know before.